If you plan on oh, that is very shaky. If you plan on becoming a software developer and you haven't yet signed up for a GitHub account, I highly recommend you do that right now before we get started with this video. As I explained a little bit in my previous video, GitHub is an excellent resource for anybody who's wanting to become a software developer because it's used for a lot more than just storing your coding projects. More often than not, it's also used as a way to showcase your work to potential employers. Once you have your GitHub account ready to go ahead and put that to the side for a second, and I'm gonna show you guys how to use the command line. And if you don't know what the command line is really just a way for you to use and I'm totally oversimplifying this, but it's a way for you to navigate through your computer in a very techie way. And because oftentimes a lot of companies require you to be able to communicate your projects that you're working on your computer onto the projects that live on GitHub, you need to know how to use that command line and all the different Git commands in order to have those communicate with each other. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started with that right now. So if you are on a Mac currently, I want you to go ahead and click Command spacebar, and it should pop up the Spotlight search. Once you see the Spotlight search on your Mac computer, go ahead and type out terminal, just like you're going into a terminal at the airport. You should see this icon pop up. Go ahead and click that open. You should see a line that says where exactly you are within your computer on the terminal. And if you don't know if where you're at is actually showing correctly, then you can go ahead and type out the keywords PWD, which stands for Print Working Directory, and it's gonna show you exactly which directory or folder you're in within your command line. And the reason why I have my Finder open here on the right hand side is because if you notice the path that is displayed to you on the terminal, it should match the same path that you see on the right hand side within your Finder. LS is going to be another one that's pretty helpful because it's going to list out all of the elements that are living inside of the current directory that you're living in. So if I type out LS and hit enter, you will see a list of all of the things that, again, are sitting within that directory. So at this point, we have a couple options. We can either create a brand new project from our local computer, AKA our laptops, our machines first, and then push them up to GitHub, or we can go through onto GitHub, create a new repository, and then bring that into our machines in the terminal. Or onto our local computers. So I'm gonna go ahead and open up GitHub because I think it's time that we jump into our GitHub accounts and get a feel for what's going on in there first, and then we'll go ahead, create a project, and link those two together. I went ahead and clicked on my actual profile so that we can learn a little bit about what's going on this screen. So on the left-hand side, I went ahead and changed my profile out. You can see I have my Suitcase Coder sub logo as my image. Right under there, I have a quick bio about myself, and then I have a list of any achievements or organizations that I am a part of. I'm not gonna go over those right now. And then on the main part of my website, I have my projects that I have pinned up there. I pinned some of these projects back when I was going through my bootcamp quite a few years ago. So Budget App, for example, is a project that's living on here, but it's also my messiest, worst project that I have in existence. But I keep it up there because it was a learning point for me. Point is that you can pin projects that you're proud of onto your main page. And then right below that, here's something that I wanna discuss for just a quick second. What you see here is a chart of a bunch of green little squares, right? And what these green squares represent is how many contributions you have made to GitHub. And you may be wondering, what is a contribution? Well, a contribution to GitHub basically just means that you have done some changes to your code, whether created code, worked on a project, worked on a line or two of code, and then you have not only worked on that code, but you've pushed it up to GitHub. And that idea of pushing up to GitHub we'll get into also in a second. But this basically means that it tracks any time that you code and that code gets linked up with your GitHub account. And when I say that, a lot of recruiters look at your GitHubs in order to see kind of where you're at in your software development process or in your journey to becoming a software developer. They'll kind of look at this and see, well, this person didn't code for 3 weeks, so like, are they even interested in, is this a hobby that they actually enjoy? And there's always exceptions to this. Some of the best coders like don't have any green squares because they're all working on private projects that don't really show up on GitHub, or some people go overboard and they'll make one little typo change, push up to GitHub and have a bunch of green squares, but there's nothing like substantial living in the code changes that were actually made. So like, of course, there's a spectrum on what those green squares mean, but typically it does mean that basically more code, more green squares. As simple as that. The next step that I want to go over within your GitHub accounts is really just looking at repositories. As you see here, I have the second tab over 119 repositories. As you push your projects up to GitHub, they should be projects that you should be proud of, or practice projects, or projects with like actual content inside of them. Whereas a lot of mine are, like I'm gonna do today, just a way for me to showcase how GitHub works. Let's go ahead and create our first repository. So there's a couple ways that you can do this. I'm gonna do it the easiest way that I know how, which is by clicking on the plus icon in the top right hand of my GitHub account. Go ahead and click on that and click on new repository. And you can kind of read here, it says that a repository contains all project files, including the revision history. So again, this goes back to what I was referring to in my last video where I talked about how Git really just helps you track the history or the different versions of any project that you're creating. And a repository is similar to a project folder. So every project that you have that is separate from another project, you're gonna create a new repository for that project. The repository name is totally up to you. A lot of times GitHub will give you very silly potential repository names, or you can name it something that's relevant to your project, which is something that I highly recommend doing. So I'm gonna go ahead and name mine Getting Started with GitHub, just because this video is all about getting started with GitHub. You can add a description if you want. It's totally not required, and it is 100% up to you. Making it public means that everybody who is on GitHub is able to go in and look at your projects. I'm gonna skip these 3 checkboxes. We'll get into what a README is here in a second, and I'm gonna click Create Repository. Because this repository that we just created is currently only living on our GitHub account, I'm gonna go ahead and choose our first main option, which says create a new repository on the command line. Just a quick recap of what each of these commands mean before I go ahead and copy and paste it over. So basically we're going to create a Getting Started with GitHub repository with a README file. We're gonna initialize it with Git. Remember, Git is what allows us to track that version control and have them communicate with each other. We're going to, again, add that README file, git commit-m first commit. This right here is basically going to leave a message whenever you create your first commit onto pushing it up to GitHub. It's also going to create a branch called main, and it's going to basically add this repository that we just created onto my personal local computer. And then once I get all that created, it's going to push the changes that I've brought in from the remote GitHub account onto my local computer. It's gonna wrap it all up, and then it's gonna push it back onto GitHub so that they both can be in sync with each other and that they can communicate from there going forward. Again, I'm just gonna go ahead and copy this from the clipboard, and I'm going to paste it directly into a directory that I want it to be saved in. Once you do that, you can see that it does a couple of things, blah, blah, blah. You can read through it if you want. If you go over to your GitHub and refresh this page, you will see that this repository got created correctly with a README file. So basically what this did is, so you created a brand new project on your GitHub account, and then on your directory, you created a folder in which you wanted this project to live. You changed directories into that specific folder or into that directory. You copied what was that little prompt that was given to us into that directory using the command line, using the terminal. You pasted it in, hit enter. It did all of the things that it had to do, and now it's synced up whatever's living on your local computer, so your computer, and whatever's living on your GitHub account. Remember, those are now gonna be able to communicate with each other. The thing that you need to keep in mind always going forward in using GitHub on your local computer, as well as working with others, as well as on your GitHub account, is to often push up your code, commit and push up your code from your local computer onto GitHub. And I'm about to go over that, but just let's take a breather. It was kind of a lot of information. So let's just take a step back and relax for a minute. Again, this is only one of the videos of my GitHub series videos that I am planning on making. So if you want to see more content like this one, or if you want to check out some of my other videos where I talk about all things learning to code, joining coding boot camps, along with some other things coming up, which I'm excited to share, then definitely go ahead and click the like button and subscribe to this channel for more videos and more content. Thanks for being here. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.